growing up, something I've learned is that once you feel too comfortable in a place, it's time to change.
Welcome to the Travel Not to Escape podcast. I'm your host, Jolene on the Go, solo female traveler and creative entrepreneur. Think of me as your skydive instructor, empowering you to take the leap into solo travel to push past your fears and transform your life. Join me every Tuesday as we explore the world of solo travel with purpose and discover how you can use it for your personal transformation, learn how to make meaningful connections around the world, and reignite your spirit of play. We aren't just talking about traveling to find ourselves anymore. We're all about doing the work to understand who we authentically are, breaking through our limiting beliefs, and taking the leaps to manifest lives we are excited about. Through interviews, solo episodes, and meditations, each episode is packed with practical tips, strategies, and inspiring stories from guests who have transformed their lives through solo travel. Whether you're a seasoned traveler or just starting out on your journey, the Travel Not to Escape podcast is here to inspire and empower you to solo travel with purpose. Strap on your helmet. We're about to jump headfirst into the journey of a lifetime. Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome to the Travel Not to Escape episode. Today, I am so excited to have my guest, Marielisa, to chat about her story of solo travel transformation. She and I actually met in Buenos Aires because we both are foodies and just ended up connecting at a lot of the events. And she's such an amazing woman and friend. And I'm so excited and grateful to have you on today. So welcome, Marielisa.
Thank you so much, Jolene. I'm honestly super excited to be here with you and, get to talk a little bit about solo traveling and many more fun stuff and catch up.
Yeah. There's so many. Oh my God. It's been so many months. I feel like at least 6 months since the last time I saw you. And I know that so much life has happened since then. Okay. So before we dive into the meat of the interview, I want to start with asking a question that I ask everyone. And that question is, what was your favorite childhood activity?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think that my favorite childhood activity was dancing. I started dancing from like a very young age. So since I was 3, I danced flamenco, which is a Spanish dance. And it's something that, has been part of my life ever since then. In different ways, it has been presented in my life, but dance has been a big part of me for sure.
That's amazing. And I think that, so there's different play personalities based off of what childhood activities that you did and when you were younger. And I asked this question because I think it's so important that we keep a sense of play in our lives. And I love that you mentioned that dance is still part of your life because it's so important to continue having that source of play, doing something because you feel like doing it because it brings that lightness to you. So your particular play personality based on that is kinesthete. So it's all about moving in your body and being in your body. So we'll tie that back again at the end of the episode. But that gives me knowing people's play styles always gives me a better idea of just like what fulfills them in life. So it's always a great way to start these questions off. Okay, so diving into your background and your travel experience, you had mentioned to me earlier that in 2021 was when you started solo traveling after a near-death experience and it changed your life. You recently just completed a all over Europe backpacking trip, which I want to hear all about. I'm so excited. But let's start from the very beginning. Can you tell me a little bit about your background? Where are you from? And the start of your solo travel journey?
Yeah, definitely. So I am originally from Venezuela. So for those who don't know, Venezuela is a country in the northern part of South America. So we neighbor with the Caribbean, but also with Colombia and Brazil. I lived there till I was 17, and then I moved to the United States where I had the opportunity to do my undergrad. I went to school at the University of Texas at Austin, so I'm a proud Texas Access alumni. And I moved to Argentina then on 2019, just because of immigration, and also I have family here, and I've been living here on and off ever since, with a short 5 to 6 month break where I went to Colombia for a study abroad experience as part of my master's because I kept studying after I finished college. And then this 3 month break where, as you mentioned earlier, I backpack all over, I would say, Central and Eastern Europe, or most of it.
Yes. And so when you went to Texas for school, was that the first time that you had done a major trip abroad?
No, actually, the first time I did a major trip was probably around 2011, where I traveled to the United States to visit a cousin. And I was probably around, God, 14, 13 at that time. And I traveled by myself. Like, it was the
Oh,
first time
wow.
I actually took a plane by myself. And I spent the whole summer in the Northeast, so between New York and Philly. So it was a really groundbreaking experience for me because it's where I got to practice my English to the point that I became bilingual.
Oh, that's amazing. And so you were with your cousin as you were traveling during that time period?
Yeah, so I traveled there to visit her because she lived there with her husband. So I did like a summer camp kind of thing, but I was living with them during most of the time.
Is that what inspired you to do your master's in the US as well?
That's a really good question. I think that for me, studying outside of Venezuela was always an idea. I'm someone who loves her home country, but at the same time, because of the circumstances and the opportunities that were out there, I decided that based on family advice too that it would be best to do my undergrad in the US. So I have family in the US which I had the opportunity to live with. So I got to live with them, do my community college first in Houston, and then I transferred to UT Austin, which is where I finished my undergrad. I did a double major there. And that's basically, I think, different experiences throughout my life were what made me decide to go to the United States and do my undergrad there, but also just my major. I mean, I studied international relations, so there's a lot of traveling involved with
Yeah.
that.
What got you to study international relations? What was that
Ooh,
inspiration?
model UN. Like I was a huge model UN geek growing up. I think that once I got into high school, I remember that probably my first year of high school as a freshman, I went to the principal's office and I was like, "Hey, I want to be part of this club." And the principal was like, "Yeah, but that's for, juniors or seniors. You're a freshman. You cannot be part of that yet." So, of course, I got that first no, but that didn't make me, give up on this. So I continued trying to participate in similar activities. And then it was on my third year of high school. In Venezuela, high school has 5 years. So in my third year of high school, that they actually recruited me, basically an assistant delegate. So I didn't get to do, all of the public speaking, but I did get to do a lot of research and be part of the whole process. And, ever since then, I somehow have always been involved with Value and that's what inspired me to study international relations.
That's amazing. I love that. I never got to be part of Model UN because I had a huge fear of public speaking. But I was always so like in awe of the people that were doing it. I always just thought it was like such a cool like network of people. Were there like a lot of were you able to meet a lot of international people by being part of Model UN then?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I even talked to some of them, and I have friends who have actually made it to the real UN. So every time I see them, on social media posting about their projects or what they're doing or where in the world they are, I just get this like big sense of like I'm just really proud of them, because of how far they've gotten. And but yeah, I've had the opportunity to meet so many wonderful people from so many different parts of the world and backgrounds through this activity that it has been honestly amazing.
That's so cool to actually see people end up doing the things that they worked really hard from an early age to get into. So it sounds like with your background, having been in Venezuela, gone to the US at an early age, and then and being around a lot of international people in the Model UN, would you say it was kind of like a easy transition for you to start traveling solo as an adult, or was there still some hesitations when you started?
I think it was easy. Of course, with everything, there's some kind of fear always present, but I never saw it like as something that would stop me from traveling solo. I actually saw it more like as a challenge, but an exciting one. So I think that when I decided to start traveling solo, it was more like, this is something I need to do to get out really outside of my comfort zone, because growing up, something I've learned is that once you feel too comfortable in a place, it's time to change.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so was that around 2021 that you said you had started?
Yeah.
What can you walk me back to, like, what happened in 2021 that pushed you towards that?
Yeah, for sure. So, as you may know, on 2020, we have the COVID pandemic. Here in Argentina, the pandemic, we had I would say one of the longest lockdowns ever. But personally, for me, it was a very difficult lockdown because right on March of 2020, so when COVID had been declared as pandemic, I was rushed to the hospital because I had been feeling really bad. I had experienced some shortness of breath, basically a lot of chest pain, dizziness. I fainted several times, and I was rushed to the hospital and ended up having something called pulmonary embolism,
Oh,
which
wow.
sounds complicated, but basically it means having blood clots in your lungs, which block any kind of air to enter or even exit your lungs. So in my case, at that time, I was 22 or 23. I'm not really good at math
Yeah,
at
you're
this time of the
so
day.
young. Yes. Oh,
And
man.
I had that episode, and in my case, it was almost lethal. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I was a 9. And luckily, I was able to be treated right away, but that meant being in the ICU for 4 days. And then once I got back to the outside world, let's say, it was weird because everyone was wearing face masks. And it was like, what's going on? So I think that after that experience, and also, learning to live with this condition, because I still have to take blood thinners and I still have to be extra careful when traveling, which I can talk more about that. It made me, reconsider a lot of life decisions and a lot of things in regards to how I was living my life, how I was behaving with family and friends, how I was treating myself. So once traveling started to slowly open up here in Argentina, that's where I decided, like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna start traveling. So it was back at then, in early 2021, I think it was around February or March, that I did my first solo trip to Bariloche, which is in the Patagonia. And I did, I think, 3 or 4 trips within Argentina, because Argentina still had their borders closed during that time. And then on 2022, once Argentina officially opened its borders, it's when I was like, okay, let's go outside and explore the
Yeah.
world.
Oh my God, that's your story is so powerful. Was your pulmonary embolism, was that related to COVID, or it just happened to be around the same, like right before it kind of happened?
At the beginning, we thought it would be related to COVID, but I didn't end up having COVID till 4 or 5 months later in August. So, as of right now, what doctors have told me is that it might be something genetic, and it was a very spontaneous thing. So, it's something that, you know, I'm a living miracle as of right now.
Yeah. Oh my God. Like I like really, I'm so grateful that like you made it through that, because I'm so happy to know you in my life. And like, I was tear up, but like, you are just such an angel and you touch a lot of people. And I don't know if you realize the impact. And so I think that it's beautiful to see you and have you around. I totally, oh, it's hard to do these interviews when you get a little emotional. Uh,
We're getting a little bit emotional, people, but that's
no, that's fine. That after kind of going through the ICU and, realizing like I just survived something that almost killed me, and then being locked down for however few months. Argentina was just so bad in terms of the lockdown. Like, what were you going through in that period post leaving the hospital, and then being now in this period where everyone is kind of not, you can't really see anyone, you can't do anything, you can't really live life. Like, what did that feel like, having this near death experience and then having this longer near death period where everyone's just so scared?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was hard in the sense that first, both of my parents are divorced, but it happened that both of them were not in Argentina at that time. My mom lives with me, but it happened that she was in the US visiting family and friends at that time before COVID was a thing. And my dad was still in Venezuela. So both of my parents were pretty far away from me. Luckily, I had my brother who's a medical student, so I
Oh,
always tell
well,
him that I'm I'm the first patient that he's safe
yeah,
because he was there with me when I was in the ambulance rush, and he was the one who insisted on like do not fall asleep, stay with me, all of
wow,
that. And then, I had my uncle and my aunt. So my mom's youngest brother, he luckily for us lives here, and he and his wife are such angels for me. I love them. And my mom had a family friend who I had messaged, I remember like days earlier, telling her like, hey, my apartment is quite big for the both of us. Why don't you come here? Because they're saying that we might be in lockdown, but just for 2 weeks. And, I have a pool here and we can chill by the pool and all of that. So I did have a support system, let's say, but at the same time, it was hard because I had to navigate two different situations at the same time. I had to navigate this global situation where you cannot go out. There's this virus that's going on outside that could potentially hurt you or even kill you. And at the same time, I had PTSD from my own near death experience. So
yeah,
it was a lot of like, understanding what happened, learning from that experience, and also, I was grieving because I felt like I lost a part of me when I went through all that experience. So I did therapy, which is something that I think everyone should do.
yeah.
I'm
Everyone should.
still I'm still I'm still in therapy. But at that time my therapy was more focused on PTSD and grief, because we know, and it's super common to grieve when you lose someone close to you, but what about when you lose a part of yourself, or when you are so close to not making it?
Yeah,
So it was quite a challenging time for me. I mean, I was so desperate to be outside in the world and walk around. Buenos Aires has so many beautiful streets that I wanted to walk around, but at the same time, I was immunocompromised. So my health was very delicate at that time. I could barely get out of my apartment because my family, they were like very attentive and they didn't want me to like literally even go downstairs to get, any kind of food delivery if I order it, just because it was very scary.
yeah. I mean, you have a virus that not a lot of people know about its effects, but know specifically that it affects your lungs. And here you are with an issue specifically that affects your lungs. So I can
Exactly.
understand just the delicate nature, but I applaud you for not letting that stop you from living. Like, you lived through a really dark period, but it's really brave of you to not just continue in that survival mode and that grieving mode, and actually look for the resources, the support systems to be able to push past it and not just, stay in the comfort zone, because it could be very comfortable to just stay around the people that were there for you, but you're actually going out into the world and trying to explore and see an adventure. And I see you all the time on Facebook posts responding to people that are new to Argentina. I see you all the time, like reaching out to like solo female travelers who have all these questions and like need help. And I honestly think that's just so beautiful that you do that. And like you're kind of like that, like welcome to Argentina for a lot of people, or like let's meet up in a different city type of connection for a lot of people. And like I see it, and I think it's just very I like seriously think it's so wonderful. So as you were able to go into starting to travel again, what was the first time when you had gone to Bariloche? Was that like a scary experience for you, traveling around Argentina solo post pandemic and like exposing yourself to not just like viruses and people, but like all the different factors in terms of safety and navigating all of that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love Bariloche. If I think that anyone should go to Bariloche at least once in their lifetime because it's a beautiful place. But yeah, the first time that I went to Bariloche after the pandemic, it was scary because first I was part of this. I did this kind of workation program, which was being promoted by Selena, and I was like, it sounds cool. I'm gonna do it. I'm working remotely. I need to get outside of the city because I was feeling overwhelmed by the city. I mean, being locked down and not being able to like get really out of the city was getting to me. So I was really excited about that part, but at the same time, Bariloche is mountain. Bariloche is a lot of hiking. It's a lot of nature. I love nature, but because I'm taking blood thinners, hiking is a challenge.
Yeah.
Walking uphill is quite a challenge just because my breathing is different. And, I'm clumsy. I'm a clumsy person. So if I fall, if I fall, I can get a cut and that's going to bleed and it's going to bleed fast. So, when I made that decision to go to Bariloche, I was like, this is going to be really exciting. It's going to definitely get me out of my comfort zone, but at the same time, I have to be extra careful because of everything that I've been through in the past year and how, I even had to talk to my doctor before even deciding to do the trip because now I have to, of course, rely more than ever on my like doctor, my hematologist, on like, hey, can I do this? Can I do that? Because I might feel like I'm Wonder Woman, but at the same time, I have a condition. And as of right now, it's like a lifetime condition. So there are activities and there are things that it could easily do before, like hiking, drinking alcohol, eating specific kind of foods that I could easily do before, but that now I have to be extra careful with. So yeah, it was quite an interesting, but at the same time, very challenging experience because it was navigating, traveling with this new condition.
Yeah, it definitely adds an extra layer on top of like the normal things you have to navigate through as a woman traveling. How have you had to, so you mentioned like being careful, having to check with your doctor. Are there any other things that you have to do in terms of traveling? Like I know like if you're on an airplane, that could also increase the likelihood of blood clots. Like what does that look like for you too?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to traveling, like I always joke and tell that I have to dress up like a soccer player because I have to wear compression socks, like really high compression socks. I'm a window seat kind of girl, but sometimes I have to go and choose the aisle because every once in a while, especially when traveling internationally, to either the United States or anywhere really, because Argentina is
Yeah, it's far. Yeah. So far.
I have to, every once in a while just get up and try to walk around the plane because if not, like I will feel it in my legs that my legs are feeling a little bit numb. And, with things like, I don't know, my alcohol resistance has considerably decreased to the point that I've reduced significantly how much alcohol I drink. I'm now sober curious, for example,
Ah, love that.
and yeah, and there are like high impact activities that I love to do while traveling that sometimes I need to be like really careful about. Like, I don't know, horseback riding. Let's say I love horseback riding, but it's like I really need to think about it once or twice if I actually want to do it, or if I do want to do something as simple as hiking, I cannot do anything that's like medium or difficult level. And like if I do easy, like I have to pace myself and understand that I'll walk slower. But like that's not gonna stop me, but it's just that I'm not going to be as fast and athletic as before.
Yeah. It sounds like you've done a lot of analysis and like awareness to really know like what are the things that are worth it for you. Like you're not going to stop yourself, but you have to find a way to where there's like a fine balance between doing it but also making sure you're prioritizing your health and safety above
Oh,
all.
definitely, definitely. I mean, I've done a lot of crazy things, which we can definitely talk more about. But at the same time, more than once, I've been like, you almost died once. Don't test the waters again. So it's a lot of balance and a lot of also relying on, my support system and my doctor. I mean, she loves that I travel, but she's always like, please wear compression socks. Please remember to,
Yeah.
walk. So it's a lot of balance, honestly.
Yeah. And like pre-preparation and more things that you have to think about, but
Oh yeah, definitely.
I love that it's not stopping you from living your life. So that's really brave. I know you just came back from grand European trip. Like I know when we were chatting in Argentina, you were just booking all of the cities and you were so excited. Like I want to hear how it all went. I know that you were using Hostess Sister as well to meet with a bunch of people. So yeah, tell me like what were some of the standout cities that you visited, and yeah, let's start from there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, I have to thank you because you helped me a lot with, defining the trip because I remember that when we first talked, I had like 25
That's so
ideas and you were like,
funny.
yeah, and you were like, you're gonna get tired and like you need to pace yourself. And that was actually really good advice. And I think that, that's why it's always important to rely on your friends who have done similar activities or who are, you know, also traveling or have had experience going to specific countries because at the end of the day it's one thing what you'll see or read online, but to hear it from someone or who has been there is super helpful. In my case, I ended up doing 3 months and a half of backpacking all over. It I would say it was a combination of southern Europe, but like Portugal, Spain, and Italy because I have family and friends there. So that was like my comfort zone, let's say, especially language wise. And then I decided to go towards Eastern Europe, so the Balkans. So I got to see almost all of the Balkan countries, and then I also visited part of Central Europe and then in, well, Hungary, Austria, Czech Republic. But yeah, it was quite a honestly amazing experience. I got
Yay.
to be in 18 countries. So yes, I did
Yes, and that's
reduce
you
the
slimming it
list.
down.
That was me slimming it down. Of course, some of these countries I had already been to before because, I have family and friends in some of them. And then other countries I had had the opportunity before to visit them because during my quinceañera, I did like a Euro trip, but it was more like a Western Europe kind of thing. But yeah, it was definitely a challenging experience. I mean, like the Balkans are super interesting, but it's quite a different culture from Latin America. It's a different language. Every
Yeah.
country has their own language. They have very similar dialects, but it was quite a fun experience. I got to meet a lot of wonderful people. I got to also meet some former coworkers because while
Oh,
I was
nice.
traveling, I was also working. So you can do both, but you have to be very responsible with yourself and with work when it comes to traveling. So I got to do both, traveling and working, and
It's
I got to
amazing.
meet, yeah,
It's so hard.
I know. It was challenging at first. I'm not gonna lie, but I think after the first month, I got to understand my like the rhythm that I needed to have in order to make it work.
Yeah.
And time zones difference helps. So I think it was just a really wonderful experience. I think that especially coming from Latin America, I did understand a lot of the struggles that they go through in the Balkans, and also
Yeah.
how it's a region that's often overlooked by travelers because of, their history. But at the end of the day, it was such a beautiful experience. They were so welcoming. I mean, I have some countries that I think like, oh, I would love to go back there. And most of them are in the Balkans, so like Albania, Bulgaria. So, it was quite a beautiful experience, and, I think it was worth it for sure.
What made the experience in the Balkans stand out? Was it because it was just unexpected, or was it like connections that you made, the environment that was beautiful? Like what was it?
I think it was a combination. So on one hand, I had very, and I have to be honest about this. I had very low expectations about the Balkans. Someone with a foreign policy background, I knew about the history of what happened there. I had coworkers from there, so I kind of understood a little bit, about everything over there, but at the same time, I was hesitant at first of going to that side of Europe just because it's not a side that gets often promoted. But then once I got to the first country in the Balkans, which was Croatia, I was like, I need to get out of my comfort zone. Like I always tell myself and tell everyone, like, you need to get out of the comfort zone. You need to travel. And here I am pretending to only stay in Western Europe, which for me is familiar. It's comfortable because it's like I speak Spanish, Portuguese, and I understand Italian. I have family in those countries. So once I got to the Balkans, my first impression was like, this is better than what a lot of people tell you about. Yes, they have a different personality. Yes, they're more straightforward than,
Yeah.
Latin Americans or than Southern Europeans, but they also are super welcoming. That was one thing. The second one was that, with solo traveling, especially as a female, there's always this fear of the different dangers that you might encounter while traveling. But I never felt alone.
Ah,
I met so many
here.
beautiful people, both from all genders, all identities, that were super nice, super welcoming. And, when you're solo traveling, you're actually never alone, or most of the time you're not alone because you meet people at hostels, you meet people at, restaurants or coffee shops or even concerts. And even when you're alone, sometimes you need to be alone. You need to have that time for yourself. So honestly, throughout my whole experience in the Balkans, I got to not only create beautiful friendships with people from all over the world, like now I have friends in Australia, in New Zealand, in Canada, Ireland, and many more places, but also, explore a part of the world that I think I wouldn't have been able to if I had decided to stay in my comfort zone. Because even my friends from Italy, they were like, "You're crazy for going to the Balkans by yourself. Like, you're going to get kidnapped or something." And nope, I'm here. Didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and now you're here, it's like convincing me to go. I mean, because there's a lot
Oh,
of
yeah,
like Eastern Europe I haven't even gone to.
I'll go with you, honestly.
Yes, yes. No, I'm excited. I think that, gosh, it's so beautiful to like hear that because there are so many countries that don't get the tourism because there's a lot of fear associated with it from past histories, past governments, but also there's I don't know, there's just a lot of like maybe stereotypes or stigma that we still kind of have to get over. So
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact that you like pushed yourself out of your comfort zone and now you can say like I actually really loved this area of the world. Come and can see it for yourself. What was the most transformative? So you traveled for 3.5 months, visited 18 countries. You're bouncing around all of Europe. Like, what, like, can you pinpoint a time that really transformed you? Was it a particular city that you were in? And like, what was that change that happened within you?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. I think, I cannot pinpoint to just one experience, but I think that, this was like in North Macedonia. So there was this national park in outside of Skopje, which is the capital. And I remember, it was a really hot day. I mean, we're talking about European summer, and it was a
Yeah.
very hot European summer.
Oh man.
But I had heard so many beautiful things about that park. And again, we're talking about me, someone who should not be hiking that much. But that day, I was like, the day looks beautiful outside. I've seen the pictures. Let's go. I mean, and I took just the bus. I used public transportation and took the bus there. And I just started walking. And I started walking and I started walking and I started walking. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, should I turn back now or should I continue till the end? Because, I'm already halfway and it was one of those situations where it was a little bit difficult to get back just because of how narrow the sidewalks, let's call them that, were. So I just kept pushing and walking and walking. And at the end, once I made it to like the end of the road, let's say, I just started crying out of nowhere. And it's funny because I'm not someone who likes to cry. I'm someone who's more, I can see other people crying, but I don't like crying. And for me, that moment where I started crying, I just sat on this bench that was there in this national park. Matka Canyon was the name of the park. And I sat there and like I was just like amazed at what I was seeing. And I was like, who would have thought that me, this girl from Venezuela, would be in North Macedonia walking on this national park, overseeing this beautiful river, which I mean, the colors were just amazing. But I think that's just one of the many experiences I had. I mean, I think another one would definitely be, I mean, I've had good and not so good experiences, but part of the adventure. Another one would be when I decided very last minute to take a train from Romania, from Bucharest to Chisinau in Moldavia, and that train was old. When I'm telling you old, it's like it felt like it was one of those trains from back in time when the USSR still existed, like
Oh man.
leather, like very like this. There was no AC, and we're talking about European summer.
Oh
And
god.
it was a 13-hour train ride. And more than once, I remember questioning myself and be like, why did I decide to do this? Why did I decide that it was a good idea to take this train to this country that I have no idea of? And that I was actually just going there to meet with a fellow travel friend who we had never met in person, but I wanted to meet her because she had lived here in Argentina, but because of her work, she had been transferred to Moldavia. And it ended up being worth it. I mean, it ended up being a wonderful experience, but of course, at the same time, I mean, you're always going to question yourself. That's something that's always going to happen. And I think that that's valid. That's definitely part of the experience behind traveling. But one thing that I would say, and I would advise everyone, is never regret the decisions you make because it's better to, live those experiences and learn from that than to think of the what if. Like, what if I had taken that train? What if I had decided to go on that road? So at the end of the day, like now I have my my funny story of me crying in the middle of this national park or me considering my life decisions after deciding to take this 13-hour train with no air conditioner.
AC,
So,
yeah, yeah. At the end of the day, you have some beautiful stories to tell and like beautiful experiences that you lived through. And 13 hours on a hot train going into a country to see someone you had never met in person, that sounds insane. But in the moment, you're like, yeah, why not? Like, what's the worst that can
yeah.
happen, right? Yeah, I know. I love that that's like,
And
those are the
yeah.
things that come through mind.
And this was for a friend, not even for a guy. I mean, if it had been for a guy, it would have been the opposite. I would have told him, like, no, you come here. I'm not
Yeah.
going there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a beautiful, it was a beautiful experience. I think it was quite interesting. I mean, because I think if it hadn't been for that friend, I probably would have never thought of, or it would have never crossed my mind to go to Moldavia. Like Moldavia is this
Yeah.
tiny country that's like literally right next to Ukraine,
Yeah.
between like Ukraine and Romania. So,
You're like, how did I
not
end up here?
yeah. And I ended up not only enjoying that experience so much, but I also ended up meeting, for example, this Spanish Moldavian couple at the largest winery in the world, or largest winery in Europe, because, I have a lower alcohol resistance, but every once in a while I treated myself and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go do a wine tasting in this place that I've heard super cool and it's affordable. So yeah, sometimes plans like that are the best ones for sure.
Yeah, you end up meeting people that you didn't think you would meet, and they're just the most like serendipitous connections and serendipitous experiences, and you don't know unless you go. And that's like it's a big like solo travel slogan. Um, and I
For sure.
know, so I today is actually my 6 months of being sober, and I
Woo!
know it's so wild because like going from Argentina where there's a lot of wine, a lot of drinking to now, like, so I totally understand the sober curious aspect. I'm actually making a guide and like a webinar and a program built around sober curious connections while traveling. I'm excited to release that. But I know that you've been doing some solo travel, sober curious, making connections everywhere you go. Can you talk about how you've met some of these like meaningful connections as you've been solo traveling and not relying on alcohol?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have to say that I come from a culture where alcohol is a very big part of it. I mean, in Latin America, if you're not drinking, you're not having fun. But funny enough for me, it was because of this condition that I have. And then also, at the beginning of this year, after Argentina won the World Cup, I kind of did a promise to myself of not drinking alcohol for 6 months. And it ended up being amazing. I ended up learning so much about kombucha and mocktails and all of that. And then during my trip to Europe, I did have some alcohol, but it was significantly less than what I would have expected, because I was coming out of not having alcohol for half a year already. But it also taught me a lot about myself. Like, for example, during my 3 months traveling, more than once, I had the decision to, I can do this wine tasting, or I can drink 3 glasses of wine or whatever, let's say. But I prefer to just have, like, I don't know, soda, like have Coca Cola, which might not be the healthiest second option, but it was another option. Or, you know, when it came to traveling, especially traveling as a solo female traveler and traveling on a budget, because Europe can be expensive. More than once, it happened to me that I ended up meeting the most meaningful and wonderful connections, well, at a coffee shop or at my hostel. I ended up meeting a lot of wonderful girls who more than once they were like, yeah, I'm not feeling like drinking today. Why don't we just have, like, lemonade or mocktails? I mean, mocktails are a thing and mocktails are amazing. I think that one thing that we should encourage people more is to try out a mocktail, because believe me, I've had more than one mocktail that really tastes like alcohol. So it's just, someone who comes from a culture where alcohol is a big part of it. It was challenging at first, especially in Italy. Oh my God, in Italy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, more than once, I realized why I was making this decision and why it was worth to maybe just, you can skip that Aperol today, or you can, like, Aperol will not go away anytime soon, but you can have another option and you can have fun and not be intoxicated or not be tipsy. So, yeah, there are so many different ways, honestly, to make connections and not have alcohol involved.
Yeah, beautifully said. And that's I think that's the thing is like when you come from cultures where alcohol is just the norm, and of course you're gonna it's time to have fun. Go drink that wine. Go drink whatever, alcohol spirit that is for that particular country. And you don't stop to question it sometimes. You just think, yeah, okay, give me that drink. And not until you're kind of put in situations where you start to have to evaluate, like, how is this affecting my health? How is this affecting my
Mm-hmm.
way of being? And is it impacting it in a positive way? That's when you have to really do the self-reflection questions of, like, is this adding to my life, or am I just doing it because this is what I should or is expected of me to do? So you're
Yeah.
actually one of the reasons why I started this journey as well. Because
No
like
way.
I remember you and Leela in like the beginning of the year, we were both kind of on these like sober mocktail queens. And at that point, I was still drinking. And it was after Argentina, I went to Rio. And in Rio, I drink a lot because, as you do, you're in Rio, caipirinhas, you do all those. And then it was after that that I realized I wasn't feeling so good in my body. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to have to lean on alcohol in order to like forget kind of how I was feeling
Mm-hmm.
with my body. Like I was starting to feel self-conscious. I wasn't as confident. And I was like, oh, I could drink more to feel that way, or I could
Yeah.
work on the reasons why I don't feel so great in my body. And so because you guys had already been, I've been hanging out with you all in Argentina, and we were starting to like seeing you guys having these delicious mocktails. I'm like, actually, that looks really good. I'd rather have that if we're just going to have like one or two drinks anyway. And that honestly made it more normal for me when I finally switched over and I was like in Medellin, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to choose the mocktail option because I don't need to drink. Right. So thank
Yeah.
you for
Oh,
being
no,
a
I'm
source of
actually
inspiration.
super happy. No, and it's, I hear you, and it like more than once I was like I felt the same. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I did drink a little bit in Europe, but I remember like I got intoxicated in Napoli, and I remember, thinking like, do I really need to get this sick? Like, do I really? And it wasn't because, I mean, it was a combination of honestly the weather and also like doing a wine tasting. Like, I was like, oh my god, in awe because I was doing a wine tasting and I
Mhm.
had the Vesuvius right there, like
Yeah.
the volcano.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I ended up feeling awful. And I was like, is it really worth it? And then also, one thing which I realized with traveling and after being in college, which was like, I did a lot of drinking in college because I wanted to look cool. I wanted to look social. I wanted to be, oh, that's the girl who can hold her drink. And, at what cost was that? At the cost of my health, at the cost of my well-being, my mental health. So, I've been back from Europe almost a month now, and I haven't had a single drop of alcohol just because I realized, like, alcohol can be fun, but it's not the only thing that you can have to have a good time, or the only thing that you can have to like spark a conversation or meet someone. And it has been fun. I mean, it has been quite an experience, but it's worth it. And it's like, I think that my biggest lesson or takeaway from this is that you can have a drink for sure, but don't force yourself to have two or three just to look cool or, be social, or because at the end of the day, alcohol kind of blocks some parts of your brain. And this is just me trying to sound super technical and medical, but I'm not. But it's like it numbs parts of your brain that block like your basically your logical reasoning. So like, why are you trying? Like, my question would always be, and that's something that I've worked with therapy a lot, is why did I wanted to block that part of my brain? What kind of thought was I trying to block by having alcohol? So I'm really happy for you. I'm really proud of you. I think I'll definitely be on that webinar. I think it's really cool that you're doing this, and you can be sober curious and still have fun. That's my biggest takeaway from this.
Yeah, I love that. I think that that's the thing is like it's just about intentionality. It's not saying like and that's I think that's the curious part of it, right? Like you don't have to be sober
Mm-hmm.
forever. But you have the freedom to choose when is it beneficial for you and when is it not? And like you mentioned, if it's because you're wanting to act cool or be a part of something or do something, like just take a step back and ask, what is it benefiting for you, or are you just trying to escape a thought or feeling?
Yeah.
Oh my god, we're almost at the time, and it's been so great chatting with you. I feel like I could chat with you for longer, but I want to make sure I ask you some questions.
Go for it.
before we go. So I we chatted about connection. What maybe would be like one tip that you have for someone who is wanting to make a meaningful connection while they're solo traveling? Like what would be your one tip for them to make those connections?
I would say that my biggest tip, based on my experience, was to not be afraid to say hi to someone. This may sound silly, but during my backpacking trip in Europe, I stayed both in hostels as well as in like private rooms. And more than once, I got to meet really wonderful people by just like saying, like, hey, where are you from? How are you? How, and also, using resources that are available online. Host to Sister, as you previously mentioned, has been a huge one. I think that I've met so many wonderful ladies through that group. I mean, I've got to be hosted by two of them during this trip. And one of my very close friends, Ava, who I met here in Argentina through Host to Sister, and then we spent a whole week together in Montenegro, and then I visited her in Austria. It was through that group. So I think, one, not being afraid to reaching out. I think, I mean, in hostels, you'll see a lot of females traveling. That's one thing that I noticed. There are more females solo traveling than men. So, that girl that's on your room and looks super nice or is on the kitchen, she might have been at that country that you're planning to go next, or she could be your potential partner in crime for that trip that you want to do, that visit to a museum, a national park, whatever you want to do. And also using resources such as Host to Sister. There are so many others, but I think Host to Sister has been a big one for me, for sure.
Yeah, those are both amazing tips. And like what I like to think is if you're doubting whether you should say hi, that person is probably also having those same exact thoughts. And one of you has to break the ice. Otherwise, you might be missing out, like you said, on an amazing connection where you could be having all these adventures together, seeing them in different countries. But one of you has to break the ice. They're as scared as you are. So you might as well take that leap, build up your confidence each time you say hi to someone. Because the more that you do it, the easier that it gets as well.
Yeah.
Love that. And what is a question that you wish you could have asked your younger self earlier, maybe at the start of your journey, like a self reflection question?
Oh, what's a question that I would ask my younger self? Wow. That's wow, you left me thinking. I'm like trying to think. I think that one that it just came up to me, and it's something that I've again been working a lot with therapy, is why are you striving so much for perfection? Because it's something that I think, growing up and from being from the country that I am and all of that, perfection and beauty standards were always a thing. And more than once, I always tried to be, I wasn't the most popular girl, but I always tried to be like the perfect friend, the perfect student, the perfect daughter, the perfect everything. And that ended up breaking me more than once. So, like, why? Like, why are you striving for perfection when, you know, it is in our differences and in our weaknesses, I think, that we can grow and become better human beings, I think. So that's like a question that I would ask my younger self. I don't know if she would have the answer right there and then, but it's just one thing that I think with social media, especially nowadays, we think it's, the ideal, like perfection, like perfect body, perfect this, perfect boyfriend, perfect girlfriend. And no, perfection is boring. Perfection is, it shouldn't be the ideal. I think that we should embrace our differences and our imperfections, because that's what makes the world go round, our differences and, what we have to offer, both the good and bad. Of course, let's make sure that in a world that's so crazy, we give more of the good. But yeah.
It's a beautiful question and a powerful one, because I think so many of us are caught up on like wanting to be perfect, wanting to get everything done that we know, so that, like, as we show up in the world, it's in this way that we have in our minds, but then it's preventing us from showing up in general, because we're never going to get to that level of perfection that we're aspiring for. So it holds a lot of us back. And I think that's a really powerful question to ask your younger self. So thank you for sharing that. Couple more.
Go for it. I'm here for
Okay,
you.
perfect. One more. Okay, so what is one tip that you would give women who are considering traveling solo for the first time but are a bit hesitant? Like, what advice would you give them?
My biggest advice, I mean, I'll just give them the advice that I've given all of my friends who have asked me about my last trip and why I was so crazy enough to do it, is if you feel it, go for it. Like, don't doubt yourself. I know that in my case, I questioned myself so many times about should I go by myself? Like, it's a lot of money, but what about work? What about this? I mean, I remember that you and I, we had this conversation. We even did a tarot card reading
Yes.
about this. And it was always pretty clear. Like, and even my therapist, that's why, again, therapy is amazing. My therapist was the first person who told me, you need to do this trip. You owe this trip to yourself. You owe this. Like, that's something that was super powerful for me. So I think is if you feel it, if you had that gut feeling, go for it. I mean, traveling is super powerful. You get to not only experience and be in different places, but also meet different people in different cultures. And yes, we talk about solo traveling, but you're never going to be alone. That's something that I can guarantee you. I honestly was never alone unless I wanted to, which you sometimes need to be alone because you need to recharge your social battery. I'm an extrovert here, but at the same time, were the ones I was like, oh my God, I don't want to go out. I don't want to see people. I want to be by myself. But you're never going to be alone. And if you're concerned about, language barriers and all of that, you know, there are tools out there. I'm more than happy to like share some of the tools I use. I think that we live in a society right now where technology is so accessible. Like you have Google Translate, you have eSIMs, so you can always be connected. Like there are so many options out there. So honestly, my biggest advice is if you have that gut feeling, go for it because it's worth it and you're never going to be alone.
Yeah, and you're always going to wonder if you don't go for it.
The what
Thank
ifs.
Yeah, they will haunt you. And we started off with a question of play, and I want to end with a question of play. What, in what ways is play part of your life today?
Ooh. So I'll go back to the answer that I gave at the beginning, which was that my favorite childhood activity was dancing. And I think I still hold that pretty much close to me on a daily basis because I'm someone who is really into music. I haven't taken, honestly, and I owe this to myself, I haven't taken any dance lessons recently, but every once in a while, I think at least once a day, I'm blasting music on either my phone or on my TV, and I'm just like dancing around and trying to like move my body because, again, as someone who has a condition related to like blood clots, I need to move myself every once
Yeah.
in a while, especially when working remotely.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I think I still, every once in a while, I haven't done it since I came back from Europe, but sometimes I go out dancing or I just dance with myself, basically.
I love that. I love that play is still part of your life, because that's something that, and it could be something small, but it's so fulfilling, and it's the thing that keeps us going when the things are hard, when you have to make hard decisions, when there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
changes, and like reigniting that spirit of play and like leaning into that is something that I found, especially solo traveling, is so important. Thank you
Oh,
so
yeah.
much, so much for sharing your story, sharing your tips, answering all these questions, and helping empower other women to solo travel and seek transformation in their own lives. In what ways, this is your space, in what ways can people reach out to you if they have more questions? I know that you also are doing and offering virtual assistant, executive assistant services. So I would love to highlight what you're working on now and ways in which people can reach you. And I'll link that all in the show notes.
Definitely, for sure. I mean, my email inbox and my LinkedIn inbox are open to anyone that has any questions about either my services as a virtual or executive assistant. And if anyone has, also any questions about traveling, planning your trip, and all of that, I'm available through email. I wouldn't say social media because I'm trying to take a little bit of a break from social media, but email for sure. And I will respond as soon as possible because I think that I'm someone who loves making things work and having a positive impact on other people. And if I can help them with either work or just figuring out what they're going to do with their travels, I'm more than happy and available to help.
Perfect. Thank you. And yes, definitely take her up on this. She is just such a beautiful source of knowledge for travel, for all things Argentina, for just honestly like chatting with. And the email, I'll link it, is marielisa@gmail.com. I'll also link the LinkedIn as well. Thank you again for sharing your story of transformation, connection, and play with us today. I'm so grateful to have met you and have you as a guest. And thank you all navigators for tuning in today's episode with Marielisa. I hope her story has resonated with you and it inspires you to transform your own life through travel. And see you all on the next adventure. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Travel Not to Escape podcast. I hope you found our conversation inspiring and insightful. And if you're ready to take the next step in your journey of self-discovery through intentional travel, I invite you to join our vibrant and supportive community of solo female travelers over on Facebook. Inside our community, you'll find like-minded women from all walks of life sharing their stories, experiences, and tips on how to make travel a transformative part of your life. It's a safe space to ask questions, seek advice, and find inspiration. To become a part of this incredible community, simply search for Travel Not to Escape on Facebook groups, or you can click the link in the episode description. I can't wait to welcome you into our tribe of fearless travelers. Remember, your journey of self-discovery begins with that first step, so don't hesitate, join us today, and let's embark on this adventure together. Until next time, keep exploring, connecting, and playing, and safe travels, navigators.